This is Signal and Noise, bringing clarity to data, tech, and AI.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Signal and Noise, a no BS media franchise decoding data, tech, and AI, and the marketing transformations that actually matter. Be sure to subscribe today whenever you can, wherever you're listening, I should say, or watch today's show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Today, we're joined by Crystal Wallace, someone that I've had the pleasure to get to know over the last few years. She joined our Brave New Worlds show at TransUnion and New Star. And thank you for joining the podcast today, Crystal. Thrilled to have you. She's an enterprise operator whose career has been shaped by moments where data moved from passive record keeping, which goes way back. It's like when Rio and I talk about how far we go back in the advertising world. It's like pre-internet to operational truth. And she's worked inside and alongside organizations like Omnicom, IPG, Publicis, and Dentsu. You're currently heading operations at Omnicom, I guess officially,
Acxiom.
and Acxiom, yeah. And you're going to share, I think a really good operator perspective for our listeners on how data, AI, and compute are reshaping how organizations function, especially agencies. And welcome to the show, Crystal. Thrilled to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. It feels so good to be part of this brain trust. Brett, you're brilliant, and hopefully will break me up my shell. This is not my natural format. I'm an intro extrovert, but yes, I've been across all holdcos, holding companies, but data has been an ethos. Even as a child, my dad was a computer programmer for IBM. So I was playing on BBS boards, if you remember those back in the day. And then, as Brett mentioned, of course, I worked for Emory in the postgraduate fellowship program, transferring, hard medical records into e-records. And I've just seen a lot of, when you get to this inflection point where data really becomes, a currency and an expression of intelligence. And I think we're obviously in that phase now. So, but there's a lot of noise. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, Rio and I joke about the fact that we both are old enough to know when internet used to be delivered on discs that arrived in the mail, right? The old AOL days, right? Sign up for an email address today.
Or even before that, remember the modems you'd plug back into your the back of your computer, the Commodore 64, right? I mean, that was where I learned how to program BASIC. It's funny. I guess it does date all of us, doesn't it?
Oh, we're getting old.
Well, Crystal, we are thrilled to have you on here, Crystal. We were excited for this episode for a bunch of reasons. I mean, I know you and Brett go way back. We just met recently, and now that we're colleagues officially, the merger happened. I'm really thrilled to get to know you better and have you on here. And for those who don't know, which is probably no one at this point who listens to our podcast, IPG and Omnicom did have a merger recently, and Acxiom, the division, which is I was so excited to work with people at Acxiom. I have so many good friends over there from over the years, so it's I think it's a great thing, and there's a lot of like synergy we're going to unlock over the next few years. I think it's already starting, but having you on was great for a bunch of reasons, especially your resume. I mean, you've done the tour to Holdco, right? I mean, you've literally been everywhere, so you have some amazing experiences, and we're thrilled to share with our viewers your points of views and what's really going on in the worlds of MarTech and AdTech, and how that's impacting marketing and how that's impacting the Holdco model, right? So you think about the last 10 years or so, there's been MarTech and AdTech ecosystems really built around these big, you might hear this term platformization, right? These large monolithic SaaS platforms, integrations. They promise integration control and centralizing workflows. And I know that's been an emphasis over the past bunch of years. You've seen a rise of a lot of these platforms. And then recently, the intersection of that and AI, and wow, what does this mean? Is this going to change the way we operate? Is this going to change the way media is bought, sold, planned, optimized, et cetera? What is the impact? Where are the investments going? How is it impacting the way we work? And how is it impacting the way our clients expect us to work? So I think there's a lot of really cool discussions that come out of this. So with that said, welcome, Crystal. And, Brett, I think you had a couple of questions you want to start off with, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you saw it in the news recently. I mean, as of today, although this episode will post a little bit post this news, but with Frontier from OpenAI and Claude Code and the co-work announcements from Anthropic, not to mention those really funny Super Bowl commercials that Anthropic put on.
Yeah, those are coming out Sunday.
I know a lot of people were flipping out about anachronisms. Like Eric Seufert was like, "This is an anachronistic take on the media industry."
I call this sanctimonious. I will
sanctimonious.
Say that.
But I must admit, as Sam Altman admitted, I laughed. I mean, I laughed my ass off with the woman, with the mother conversation. That was really funny. But these announcements seem to be really impacting the investor community and how they're seeing monolithic SaaS, right? And they're, in a sense, there might be a panic mode right now. They're panicking because they're seeing that these impacts of sort of long horizon agentic capabilities that can almost replace a person, and with repeatable, functional, orchestrated tasks, not just sort of discrete single tasks, right? And it's starting to, people are starting to look at the legal industry, these other industries that are supported by SaaS or otherwise. I mean, what do you see that impact? And do you think that the market is this question was not the first question I listed, but it was sort of top of mind. Do you think that it's that the market is overreacting? Or do you think that really this is going to play a huge role in sort of the future of work and the future of technology
100%.
within agencies or otherwise?
So it's powerful. It's coming, and it's coming soon. I think there's a over-indexing right now of how much it can do autonomously, right? We need human in the loop. And for me, I'm really excited about the ability to elevate and control more kind of mind space and think, elevate and do more, because right now we live in a very kind of reactive state. That's both, just from a personal standpoint, but even the workforce, everything is, always on instant. And I think maybe it's some byproduct of COVID, but um, I think there's over indexing on, the workforce is going to reduce. Instead, we should get a smarter workforce doing higher level things with the intelligence that it's feeding. And we can give AI, MCP, your agent swarms, your agent societies, the tactical things that kind of like bear us down, is kind of what I'm thinking. We do have to change the model.
It raises the value. It kind of forces people, and especially new employees, to sort of quickly move up the value chain, right? In terms of the strategic value they're delivering.
They almost have to.
That's what it is. And if I am a master prop engineer, and so are you all, but you should, I mean, it's like in the early days of search, if you don't know how to search the right way, you're not going to get the results that you want. That's the same thing right now with these agents. They're still, I mean, in this company, I say that today, and then like tomorrow there'll be a release where it's doing something else crazy. But you still need to know how to prompt deductive reasoning. This is where common sense comes in really good. Order of operations, it is still kind of a very much, it is a system. And so if you understand kind of system dynamics and design strategy, then it can do some really powerful, amazing things. But human in the loop right now is still paramount. I don't think that people are just starting to tinker, like the general population, the general work population. And I'm pushing all of my staff, my team, everyone, like champion, like go hit, GBT or Copilot or Anthropic, Perplexity, and see what happens. Some are good at, almost like robotic processing automation, and they can watch and then take and, automate. Some are not good at that. Some are better at writing. Some are better at, coding. And there's a whole ecosystem, and it's not all the same. And so understanding, what model to use for what. And of course, you have the MCP players creating kind of that logic and reasoning. But guess what? That comes with a cost, a toll. So I think we're still in early stages. I mean, the the possibilities are endless, are going to be amazing, but it's going to be a while, I think, until you have, what is it, AGI and things of that nature, where humans can just sit at home and do nothing, make the bots work for them.
Yeah.
So we're not there
Yeah,
yet.
maybe one day, right? I mean, it's, I don't know. There've been predictions about AGI being 2 years away or 30 years away. And I agree with you. I don't really think I think it doesn't matter, right? The fact is these tools are very useful. I think you said a couple of really important things there that I want to call out, and I agree with. I think number one is about knowing how to prompt engineer. I mean, look, it's not rocket science to build a prompt engineer, but I have noticed more senior people with more experience and better context and better subject matter expertise are able to get a lot more value from the large language models, from these AI tools. It's really interesting when we're comparing the outputs from them from different people. I compare what I'm getting if I'm, let's say, working a project with junior people. It's much better. Honestly, I can get a much better outline than someone who doesn't have the right context to put it in the first place. So I find that's very interesting that more senior people actually, your value is almost amplified by it, right? I think that's number one. I think the other point you made that's really good, and then I do have a question after this. The point was about them all being different. They are different. They're evolving all the time. They're always pushing updates, but many people don't realize Anthropic is mostly used B2B, right? It's used because it's used for writing code. It's amazing at that.
Yep.
Granted, the new OpenAI release is apparently pretty good. I haven't tried it out yet, but then OpenAI is mainly used for writing. So they all have their different things they're good at. So I think that's a great point. But I guess the question I had for you is looking at like the workforce, like how are you seeing our clients? I mean, are clients expecting that things will be done quicker? Are they expecting that things will be done more efficiently? Are they asking for discounts as a result of AI? I'm curious what you're seeing kind of out in the field.
Well, I'm going to answer the last question. Clients are always asking for discounts. They have suites.
Fair enough.
This is going to be more
trained them.
This is going to be more of an excuse to ask for discount.
Like, I don't know. I mean, of course they expect to do, more with less and smart, but I'm not actually seeing that as a push. They are absolutely expecting to see how the agency leverages AI on their behalf to drive modern marketing. And and all the way throughout. So, you can use it for contracts, you can use it for, synthetic, personalities, you can use it to optimize the brief. So, what are the aspects? And they want to see it show up in that end-to-end workflow in a way that is privacy safe. The other thing that I am seeing as well is they want to be able to connect with agents on the agency side. They want help building their agents and transforming, how they leverage, Agentic and all these models. Can they do more, in terms of modeling, faster in real time? So like what can you do to really enhance that? But I don't see it as cost pressure or constriction yet. I think we're already there are other factors that they've been, kind of trying to negotiate in terms of cost. So
Yeah, that's something that we talked about at Advertising Week actually this year, and I brought this up before, but just I think it to that point of cost pressure is I think it is going to put cost pressure on the FTE model because you do because of the compounding effect, especially to your point, Rio, of the more senior people. That I think the critical thing with the seniority of people is systems thinking. It's the ability to systematically to develop and orchestrate programs, which is very systems thinking oriented. And you brought that point up as well, Crystal, because that's what allows you to orchestrate an agentic workflow or a combination of agents to do something that's more than just a discrete task. It might be a set of tasks combined to a bigger thing, a playbook or strategic play or whatever. So I think
that's right. That's why I say the model is wrong. So the FTE for sure, like that. However, I think that there's a different way commercial model. And right now they're overpaying for platforms and not realizing the full value of them, right?
That's
That's when you need
100%.
so that's when you need consultants. You want us to use AI, it comes at a price. Like it is not just I mean, if you have pro or you have, you know how much you're paying for those token and that usage fees. So
It's
again,
not
it's
cheap. Yeah.
a different model, not saying, and I think smart agencies, you get ahead of this. It's not, it is understanding kind of what things you can start to shift, you need to elevate, you need to invest in to drive those capabilities of the future. So it's system integrators, it's, the data science is really how do I make everyone a strategist and
Yeah.
generalist probably at the same time.
You mentioned a token-based model earlier. I love that. It's the first time I've heard that for the agency. Like, I love if you can maybe elaborate on that a little bit. Like, what do you think that looks like? How does that change the way we function, we operate, where we service clients?
It's totally half baked. So this is probably going to be a bad answer, but I remember when I was at another whole company, and this was probably, I mean, ahead of its time, but we were in a platform based world. Now you're hearing that all the time, platform world. Um, and that was actually based on all the platforms that we were having to, that we had to pay for in order to service the business we always serviced. Now I see like where are the costs in terms of the supply chain? Where are the increasing costs, that I need to look at and plan for? And that largely is around AI and usage, whether it's in the cloud, right? You're paying usage-based fees in the cloud, tokens, et cetera. And so that's where my token concept comes from. I used to think maybe we're going to be a crypto or, bit, but you see what happened to Bitcoin yesterday.
Yeah, it was an annihilation. It went up
Yeah.
today, but it was pretty
I
bad.
haven't checked it. I was like,
and you're talking about the technical supply chain, not the media supply chain, like the programmatic real-time bidding supply
well, I
chain.
mean,
You're talking about the technical, the tax.
the MarTech stack that supports that, but I mean, we transact on CPMs and, so what if, and typically the FTE model is like a percent of, it's usually a commission-based fee. So
Yep.
what if we got into, something that was more of a token fee for outputs than performance or something like that? It could be
Yep.
tech, but it could be some way in how we transfer or we transform the current FTE model to something that is tangible, outcome based, and not based on how many people you have on the account, but the
Yeah, and
usage.
it's usage based. Yeah, in a lot of the AI companies, and I'm kind of starting my own AI powered company. A lot of the talk is around that. It's around usage based pricing and the outdated nature of kind of seat based SaaS pricing. Which, to your point, if you see that's the one big economic like sort of metric that you look at with SaaS is that when usage goes down, no surprise, right? Churn goes up, right? There's a
Yeah.
direct causation between and you track thresholds, right? And so we know, and I've known this throughout most of the SaaS companies that I've worked for, that once usage gets below a certain threshold, you can reliably and confidently predict that company is likely going to call you at some point and say, we're not going to be renewing this contract.
We're not renewing, yeah.
Right. And so you're
we're
always
renewing at a very steep discount, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to get a renewal plus whatever, and it's not happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you said platform-based world, which I thought was interesting because maybe this leads us to that conversation around agentification versus platformization. Rio and I just had a conversation about the CDP world and the magic quadrant that came out that sort of bifurcated the two worlds and showed, two really different paradigms, which I think you were pointing to, right? Is it a platform-based world, or are we moving away from a platform-based world would be my question.
You always have to have an application layer, right? What does that application layer look like? Now, I think for right now, it still very much is, because brands want to control their data. The most valuable data asset now is what enterprise brands data, because the internet has been scraped by these LLMs. So they should be guarding and securing that. You can do data shares, you can do cloud to cloud, you can do MCT to MCP, but we are still humans. We still need to touch, see, feel, light, sound, motion,
Yep.
what we're doing, what we're activating on across those different use cases. So um, I let's not call it a platform, but you're still going to need an interface. What that interface evolves to, not sure. The LLMs are making it such almost a walled garden, right? You can do now. We got ads. It can go and search the internet for. They're trying to keep you in that environment, but it's like for me, like sometimes I want to be in more of a a chat GBT type interface but sometimes I want to go into Excel because it
Yeah.
feels there's a behavioral science to, like, again, format. Will that change? Sure. As further adoption happens, people get smarter and those habits kind of transform. But yeah, I think there still will always be an application layer, at least for right now. I think the Internet of Things is probably a real possibility. And so maybe like our traditional SaaS-based platforms and things like that, that's not what we're talking about in terms of interface. It's the
Yeah.
wearables, it's the augmented reality, so it'll be now I'm going into futurist territory.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Oh,
But
I
we like
love it.
that. No, keep
But
going.
You're
Yeah.
you're the technology futurist. But you're right. There is still an interface. That's what you're saying, right? Like whether the interface, whatever the form factor.
But Brad, but counterpoint, like how much of that is just we've been trained to expect there to be an interface versus there actually is a need for one, or does Agentic maybe? I don't think it's going to completely go away, but is it minimized in the future?
I'm not sure. I am a format based person. So I am biased towards the way my brain thinks, and I think there are a lot of people who it may go in the future, but are we looking at 5 years? Or are we looking like 20? Right? Everybody got used to the smartphone really quickly, and so the forcing function of that was just ubiquity. I'm not sure about
Yeah.
this. Not everybody has the same access to my
This is true.
my LLMs are a lot better than most. Not
Yeah.
only because I have the enterprise ones, but guess what? I actually spend about $150 and could spend more if I did more and weren't so stressed then. But just on premium subscriptions I have every major. There's all like Lovable, Replit, and I don't even use it because I don't have time. But I just want to be first to market. I'm a first adopter. And so again, once it becomes, critical mass, and I'm not, a scientist. I'm not that smart to predict like those, behavioral element things. But I don't think it's like within the next, let's call it 2 years. I think we're still gonna need platforms to interface with.
I don't know. My hypothesis is that the future, like the eventual design, the UX of AI is this.
Yeah.
Is conversational.
It's conversational.
Yeah,
I think
it's Star Trek.
it's Star Trek.
Yeah, you just talk to the computer and it does.
Computer, make me transparent aluminum, like in the Star Trek 4, right? That's what I think it's going to be like. I mean, that might be a ways off. This is true, but I guess going back to like the discussion where I kind of pulling us back in a little bit. So Crystal, one thing I'm really interested in, right? Like you talk about platformization, the creative these, like whether agentic workflows on top of it. I think for agencies, this is really interesting time. So I'm seeing all over the agency world, both indies and holdcos making really big investments in audience platforms and workflow management, brief creators, kind of building out this agentic layer. A lot of that's happening at our holdcos as well. It's like really exciting stuff that almost seems to me a different way of going to market. Let's go to market with IP, with platforms. Let's be a product company. Love your thoughts on that, what you're seeing.
I think it's the right move. You have to be, have data and technical maturity in order to reach our brand's consumers at the pace and play of just this highly, changing world that we live in. And first, giving that power to your people so they can do things smarter, faster, be more strategic for the brands, I think is awesome. It helps to um, bring all of the different workflows, pun intended, across omni-channel. So creative, media, paid, search, own, marketing, all these different and again, I tend to go back to, okay, where does the revenue door come in? Typically you have a CMO, you have a CFO, you have, and they work across multiple parts of the I would say the marketing foundation. And they typically have different influencers, key buying factors. When you have a common way to bring the function together, i.e., through, these agentic workflows that are interconnected, that, drive messaging bus within the environment, but also within the clients. It creates a flywheel of just common understanding. It
Yeah.
decreases a lot of the friction and tension that sometimes naturally exists between different, cross-functional groups that are, essentially all kind of charged with getting closer, driving more um, equity and outcomes for the brand. So I think it's great. I've again been around the block and I've seen kind of the pitch theater of these platforms, uh, and I could say what we have here at Omni, like, it actually works. People are actually using it. It's actually solving the pain points. I remember when I, ran a data science team, when I used to be a media buyer and had to go into like 10 different platforms and, or you have to do all this rule-based logic. To your point, Rio, we have an orchestrator, an MCP like Swarm, and I can just type from, "Hey, give me some competitive intelligence." I can go on my specific module, and sometimes I do just because again, I like to tool and I don't know, I don't know, get my hands dirty. But I can do all functions from that one prompt window, and it's
Yeah.
pretty amazing. And so I'm just
Well, it's better than 10 platforms, right? Yeah.
10
Well, it,
platforms, having a brief,
Yeah.
10 partners, I mean, so yeah, it's I don't know. I'm
I
excited.
think you made it's funny, and I love how you think, Crystal, because that you have me creating visual flywheels in my brain, right? You're visualizing. You must have been really good at math, because isn't the secret to math to visualize almost in 3 dimensions, even 4 dimensions? And that's how you actually solve complex math problems, is through visualization. I think
Yeah,
Stephen Hawkins and
discrete
and his theories on
mathematics.
the black hole. It was all diagrams and visualizations. But to your point about the functional, I think what you're talking about is GTM compression, right? It's
Mhm.
customer lifecycle compression. So as opposed to having multiple functions that are focused on different steps in a process to delivering, let's say, a product launch program that's for P&G that's going to market, and there's multiple steps from sort of audience and ICP to creative development to media buying and segmentation and all that stuff. If you bring all that stuff together, all the different functions and people that are working separately under the FTE model suddenly can see it all within one model, which becomes a flywheel. And they're able to
Uh,
see a holistic picture of, really, it brings the customer, in a weird way, it brings the customer, it sort of centralizes everything into one
you
play,
swarm around
right?
that customer. Yeah,
Yeah, and
absolutely.
you would think that the tech might have the opposite effect of sort of pulling you further away or disassociating you further with like the human. But in reality, you're saying you're kind of seeing all of this stuff and its impacts across a life cycle of different actions that the agency's taken to
Yeah,
deliver a campaign on behalf of a product, right?
yeah. And I love
Is
how
that the
you
right
said
way
the
to think
life.
about it?
No, I think that is absolutely the right way to think about it. And I love that you said life cycle because now we're not just doing campaign planning. You are planning for the life cycle of that customer value and even looking future proof to inform R&D, type of decisions, what are the byproducts that a brand, maybe can create another product on, because now, you're operating kind of in this continuum. So yeah, I think you nailed it, at least the way I view it.
Is that what you guys are thinking about in terms of, because I think about when I look at the agency model, and I think at the sort of the FTE based holdco model, I think a lot of the young independents that are very tech forward, and Justin Towns Copeland and I, the CEO of 4A's, talked about this at Adweek, how they aren't as reliant on FTEs because they've become so tech forward. Right. Do you think that raises a threat to the larger agency holdcos, in the sense that you can have smaller, nimbler, faster moving independents that can really move up the value chain and win very big accounts? I mean, do you think that's going to have a
Until
competitive?
they can't. Until they can't. So I came from a startup, Search Ignite Ignition One, that then got acquired by Dentsu, and we did some amazing things. We were absolutely tech forward. Before, and I won't purport all the amazing things that we did, but there comes a point that you need clout. Now, back then we didn't have kind of the acceleration of change and these, the agentic force that we do now. But I think that they're a threat, but are they a sustainable threat if holding companies get it right in terms of the right optimal mix of FTEs, people at the right altitude, and technology enabling that? Does that answer your
Yeah, it's
question?
interesting. My hypothesis, yeah, that was a good answer. I mean, I think my hypothesis, I agree with you, Crystal, is that I think the agentic or AI disruption for like ad tech and media planning and buying is going to happen really at a kind of at a platform level. So who's in platform today? I mean, brands, unless they have big in-house teams, they're not doing it. It's really happening at the agency and holdco level. And who's managing most of the media spend? It's the holdcos, right? So I think that it's their opportunity now to adopt these tools and build it out for cost savings, and clients are going to expect downstream savings and better performance and all that. They expect that as an outcome. But I think that's where the innovation happens, because I mean, I think MarTech's different than ad tech too. Like MarTech, sure, you can like build agentic workflows on top of a pattern, but ad tech really is, if you want to impact so a lot of it really is internet scale, right? So I think so I think that it's going to be hard for these platforms to roll out things. So it's going to happen probably at a holdco level, the people actually in platform every day, building these things across platforms. So I think that's probably where it's going to happen. So I think it actually does being in a position where you manage a lot of spend and you have a lot of clients and you're actually is probably advantageousness, I would guess.
Yeah, it isn't that how. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Crystal.
No, I was going to say, I mean, your ability to view, much more observations in terms of what's really happening across the space. Yeah.
And across their media spend and across their data, right? And I think that's where you saw, the creative agencies split from the media agencies, 15 years ago or 20 years ago, which I think you're going to see that coming back together in a very strong way. And I see a lot of independent creative agencies that are struggling because their whole sales model was a linear model, project based. We deliver a project, done, but guess what? We're not serving the media. We're not collecting the data or orchestrating the data, which is what you've been doing your whole career, Crystal, right? And the more of that you do, the more capable you are of competing on an IP level. Like you've got the client IP, the golden goose. Well, Brett,
even training the large language models. So you think about it. Like I heard an interview, there's a Dwarkesh Patel, he interviews Elon Musk this last week, and he asked him, how did you train your AI? He said, Tesla. We had all these people with little computers driving around the country, taking in all this information. So I think that the scale is a huge advantage for really building intelligence.
Yeah. And you need scale to feed these models. So absolutely. I had a point and I completely forgot it, but it was around, just again, the being able to also understand the ecosystem. Not all these players are the same. Not all the clouds are. You have to connect in a different way. When do you do a delta share versus, and what my hope is that how we're transforming at Omni, we can pivot whether we need to kind of go against the big guys, we know what that competition looks like. But we're
Yep.
nimble enough and dynamic enough to compete with the independents just as well. And I'm seeing that. Sometimes feel sorry and just want to acquire and give them the amplitude that they need. But I think what I'm saying is that if you're playing it smart, you can actually you can compete up and down, especially when you don't
Well,
have to put
well,
three
looking at
weight.
Omni, I mean, like, maybe we turn to that in Axiom, because I mean, I was so excited about this merger. The biggest reason was Axiom. I'll be honest. It's just, I just thought of it the crown jewel of IPG and like one of the most valuable like data assets in the industry, right? So I'd love it if you can maybe I don't know how much you're able to share. I mean, obviously you probably have some trade secrets you don't want to tell people on a podcast, but how much can you share about your roadmap, what you're doing with AI, any agentic kind of like layers you're building on top of that, how that relates to Axiom and your data set?
Yeah. So I can share a little bit. I'm not sanctioning here, kind of more as an independent, but it's super exciting. Axiom is the oldest people-based identity really in the world. We are global. Our real ID powers up, the Fortune 500. We have 9 out of the 10, top banks. So we understand how to move in a highly regulatory or regulated industry. Same with pharma and healthcare. And just the ability, again, we know how reliable cookies are, and even device signals when you understand kind of at the personal level. And of course we anomalize that when we need to across the various different channels, but it creates a precision, a persistency, and ability to really drive efficiency and effectiveness and ultimately outcomes. And Omni and the tools and the data that are plussing up from, like Flywheel, the commerce data, like it's just going to be incredible. Best identity spine, best commerce data, best, attitudinal,
Okay, we got a rule on Signal and Noise: no shills. No, I
I'm just saying this
yeah.
this one's worth it. But
Yeah, and I know the language you're speaking, having come from Newstar and TransUnion. We actually had this conversation a bunch, Rio, at CES, was this notion of identity and quality data being critical, right, for especially persistent, and oftentimes it is still identifier oriented, when you think persistence or semi-persistent, because it's the stuff, the identifiers that are less likely to change over time, that you can still link back to a person in their household and that
that's
sort of
right.
things. What do you think about the role of synthetic data and the ability to, you talked about this a bit earlier about, and it's something that I'm doing with my company. It's sort of competitive simulations, buyer simulations, meaning like in my particular case it's B2B, and you're going at a CMO buyer. How do you simulate based on their use cases, their needs, their psychographics, their the market intel, how they're going to respond to a specific message, a specific creative, a specific
Oh,
value prop.
so this is my favorite, like my favorite topic right now is synthetic
Oh,
audiences and building and playing with them. I think there'll be more of that, like in coming or what have you. I believe in the scientific method, so that's testing, and so it gives us a way to test hypothesis and observability. But again, with anything else, what those synthetic audiences are trained on is going to really predict how valuable they are, how reliable they are.
yeah,
Again, a brand's first party data and those interactions, being able to, put the right data in, and it brings together like the qual, primary market research with, addressable. So it allows you to do that stuff, um, without having to go out and, have a whole focus group. We can do it faster. Not to say that that goes away, but again, it's about the data inputs. But it's super exciting. I think it raises understanding quicker about who the true audience is.
yep,
It definitely helps with innovation and helping you to reach those consumers in a way that drives kind of the equity of the brand, understanding kind of when and when you shouldn't be addressing them and,
Yeah.
versus going mass. So I'm excited. I even created a
And it's
Sonos song about digital twins. So I'll
Oh
share it.
wow. Yeah, and this when you think about it from your perspective, from an operations and tech perspective, I mean, I think the key here, at least going forward, isn't you're not doing this on a one-off basis like a campaign. It's much more systems thinking. Like, you're not going, we're going to do this for one campaign to ensure that the likelihood that this campaign engages and converts is X versus Y, right? That's great, but that's like sort of in a box. That's sort of time bound.
It
I
needs to
think
be continuous and always on, and then your
yep,
campaigns are, they are a segmentation of those data inputs. And so you can say, oh, this campaign really responded well. Here are the tactics, here are the partners, here are the activations that maybe you should do again to continue to reach.
yeah, the
And that's an
segments, the
thought you should be able to.
subsegments, yep,
Yeah.
Hmm.
yep.
By the way, I really like the example you gave of the synthetic focus groups. I actually saw that in action recently. It was really impressive. It was built for a client where, I mean, I've had clients who've done market research forever, right? A lot of my pharma clients way back in the day used to always do these. These studies would take months and months, and it'd be very expensive, right? And they would get a little book in the end, right? And then I saw in a matter of minutes, the client said, these are the different types of people I want in the focus group, different types of personalities. You could pick.
Yep.
You could build your focus group, and then it would rip through this in seconds. It was really impressive, time saving. And I went in a little skeptical because I've always been a little skeptical of market research, to be honest, being someone who
Oh,
comes from more.
Oh,
I mean,
that's
I
a whole
come
other
from
topic, Crystal. We got to tackle
another
that
topic,
one.
right? Because I've seen a lot of dubious studies, I'll be honest, right? But
yeah,
this is super. This is super impressive. I was like, wow, this saves time. This is much, it's less expensive. It saves time. And I thought the output was outstanding.
Yeah,
yeah,
depending on the inputs for how you're testing, like if you're using, some scientific approach to personality, like the Jungian personalities, and you can subdivide that in 1,000 different ways. But
yeah.
qualitative data and survey-based data, I've talked to a lot of data scientists, data analytics professionals, even AI professionals that continue to this day as much skepticism, Rio, like to your point, that I've had about like people filling surveys out. It's kind of, you think about statistics and how people sort of game like the Yelp and the review type of
Hmm.
platforms because you're likely to respond. It's either the people that loved the experience or hated the experience, but nothing in
Yeah.
nothing in the middle. How do you think about, and I don't know if surveys kind of follow some of that statistical logic, but I think you can kind of run a regression and
Yeah, I
eliminate the
mean,
outliers.
no, survey's a good one. I mean, I think you have to design the survey right, and you have to design it with built-in bias. And sometimes there does have to, um, they're typically going to be incentivized. But then you can back up and qualify that data with different mechanisms, different, truth sets to ensure that, there's not too much bias that's introduced. I think that they're extremely valuable. It can't be the only thing. It cannot be, but I think that coupled with other, you know, um, advanced analytics and, data science helps to validate those panels. But you need to, you have to design it right.
Yeah, so qualitative data still plays a role, but it's agentified or as
Yeah.
what you saw, Rio.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
yeah.
this is interesting because we've had this debate a couple times this pod, Crystal. I'd love to maybe get your thought on this too. I don't know if this is right or wrong answer, right? But the debate was, okay, as we switch to this more like AI first agentic world, like, as we talked about before, maybe the whole UI will change or I don't think it'll be a prompt, right? But it's going to disappear. And like, I guess the challenge we have a great interview with a UX, like a UX leader who designs AI systems, but it's like, no one knows what it's going to look like. And does even like, I've worked in UX and CX for 20 years, right? A lot of the things like ethnographic research, ride-alongs, like different types of studies. Could you even apply it to this? Or is it going to be more like you just need someone to say, I have a vision, I'm going to do it, I'm going to put it out this. I don't know. Like, there's a lot of these, are they still relevant? I mean, what's your thought?
I think there's arguments that some methods aren't relevant because consumers don't act that way anymore. So 100%. That is a good provocation, not to say any or others for it. But or maybe it has to be, well, no, yeah, we need to look at it. I'm going to go and see like which ones, if the normal kind of, consumer journey changes, what does that mean for kind of, that qualitative research? I think I mean, does it go to just brain sensors? Like there's that type.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, look, my hypothesis for it's funny. I always used to get asked when I pitch clients on CX. This is like 10, 15 years ago. They said, why should we do this? Technology always changes. My response would always be, technology changes, but the needs don't. The needs will stay static, and it's extrapolating. What are those needs? How do you translate those needs into things, right? Into features, into products? And something needs to change. So that was always the answer. But I don't know, like I remember when AI first came out, it was like, I almost had to step back for a few months and say, holy crap, like this might actually change everything. And I don't know if I'm that convinced anymore, like about that we can't do it, but I don't know. I mean, it really made me rethink those methodologies that I learned over 20 years.
Yeah. And maybe it's the methodology is optimized, but what really changes is the way you collect that signal, that input into into those studies.
Yeah.
And
so I got a topic that I know you love, Crystal, is governance. So data governance, it's so critical. I mean, you talked about the middle layer with MCP. There's semantic layers built into some of these platforms that help tell the AI basically what to do and how to respond. And it gives sort of guardrails, sort of decisioning guardrails. So governance, and that leads to data governance. It leads to some of the privacy conversations with trust, right? Are there technical answers to this question? Is it policy based? What's your perspective on that?
Technical, policy based, unknowns. That's why I don't think we can get rid of the human in the loop as fast as people think, because we don't even know right now what governance, challenges. I mean, yeah, we have like, it becomes actually, there are plenty of examples that are kind of scary right now. Imagine that at scale when when everyone is using it. And so,
give us an example. Give us an example that's scary. Do you have one?
I mean, when Brock posted on X, like users who, I mean, that's one. They had one where
yes, that was a big one.
That was bad. Yeah.
Then there's some that like they've let the AI, like especially now in research mode, you go and let it go off and research, and if you can give access to your systems to actually do things, and so it sent these emails that were completely inappropriate with clients, like you have things like that have happened. Data leak, like it needs context. It needs validations, not just of accuracy, but also from a governance and policy standpoint. And there are players out there that, alongside with Acxiom, that are creating the frameworks. Just like we had, data governance and privacy, it needs to be kind of the same like approach. There's always been concern that you don't want to be too heavy-handed or you stifle innovation, but this is one where, uh, erring on caution, I think is really important. We've worked, and this is why we are more of an ecosystem partner. I think modularity and things of that nature are really important. I love the MCP frameworks because I want you to deal with all your agents and APIs and validate that they are compliant, governed, etc. I'll do the same with mine. We'll have ways to test those out, but again, those are operating models and partner frameworks that I think help protect with governance. And then there's companies like IBM that actually they put together some really good um, AI governance around this, and are playing more in that space versus, um, although, they have Watson too, which is great. But that's the way that, I think that there's a lot more, and everyone needs to double down on what does this mean? What is your compliance by design, your governance specifically around these AIs? Um, and it's challenging because you want to release out to your workforce, out to your team, so we can, do things faster and better. But there's a real risk, and the those risks are one of those risks are more costly than a whole bunch of little risks. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's like if you're too heavy handed, you sort of stifle innovation, you slow things down. But if you're not centralized and there's no enforceability, you're sort of expecting people just to adopt these best practices and these frameworks,
mhm.
right? As a, out of the goodness of their heart, and there will be bad actors. So you run
Yeah,
into that risk, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like being on the, let's say, the selling side of a lot of AI, a lot of times that clients almost won't fund anything unless there's an AI written into it. But once you add AI into it, you get all these different groups who suddenly need to have a say, right? It's like suddenly governance is there, legal, compliance, right? Which they should be, right? So,
yeah,
but I think it's interesting how that's what you need for funding now, but it slows things down dramatically, and it's much more
yeah,
complex of a sale because you have all these nuances, right? And the regulatory landscape is changing.
yeah. It is changing. I mean, there's rules that aren't even written. So whereas GDPR, CCPA was cumbersome. I mean, we're gonna deal with it, and rightfully so. It's just if you are a you know if you're a technology company or product company, you want to be AI forward, you got to get ahead of it and help set and inform policy. And that's not to your benefit. It's what is right for you know the world really and the consumers. And so be a good human.
But it's interesting. I think that kind of takes us back, Crystal, to your point before about like brands' first party data, right? Because you think like you said about the LLMs, they've scraped everything, right?
Mhm.
Anything that's public on the internet, they've scraped it. And, it's unfortunate for publishers. They're not going to be compensated for that, right?
Yeah.
But as I remember, Brett, when we talked to ad tech therapist Scott Messer, he said anything like that.
One of the many
Yeah,
therapists that we've talked to.
yeah, we had a martech therapist and ad tech. So, but like ad tech therapist, his point was the ship sailed. That's content scrape. Anything new, however, that you own that, you should monetize that. You should be paid for that. But the point about brands, like that is their data. It hasn't been scraped.
Hmm.
It's yours. You should protect it. It has value. You can do things with it. You got.
Yeah.
Obviously, you want to do it in a privacy safe way that respects people's rights and their consent, but that there's a lot of value there in terms of building out their future, whatever the future is going to be. That could be should be the foundation of it.
Absolutely. And it does start with a data foundation, all of this. And if you lock in those AI governance guardrails at your data foundation level, then I think you reduce your risk. So risk mitigating function. And it's exciting. And
Do,
I actually like all the InfoSec questions that I've seen and the new business pitches. There's more, CISO, BISO type of security and audits and SEERs and data privacy assessments and being a former having an undergrad in risk management and insurance and an actuarial it feels good to kind of see that, although it does slow down the deal, but it's the right thing.
Yep. So looking ahead, so I'm going to do one more futurist question for you, Crystal, because I think about this all the time, and I don't think any of us have an answer for this, but it does seem like, I think the topic around governance, that tech is moving at a pace that human institutions are struggling to adapt to, and can't keep pace with. We talked about it in our last podcast, where the introduction of the printing press to Europe via China led to the Reformation, right? And then we talked about the impact of social media on our own children and how that's sort of it's sort of outpacing
and radio, like helping give rise to fascism, which is
Yep.
so yeah. We talked about those trends a little bit.
Yeah, and it's sort of technology outpacing human change, right? And even though it has a long-term benefit arguably.
Well,
In the short term, it can have this really disruptive feel to it. I mean, it seems like, we're moving very fast. I mean, the product life cycles, the release life cycles, the innovation life cycles are so compressed, it seems, with AI.
mhm,
And we all grew up through the internet revolution, right? We're
yeah,
Xers, right? So we created the internet, right? Now you're seeing the pace of change speed to a point where I think it's having some crazy effects around the world. My biggest concern is not biggest concern, but I always say this, and I think it's theoretical, but it's not more than like a decade away. Is what happens when quantum computing becomes mainstream, right?
yeah.
Right. When you take, instead of having to kind of terraform your land mass to support server farms where you can do 1 trillion times the computations
Well, it's going to
on
go
a,
into space, Brett.
yeah, it's going to go into space on and be
But
powered by the
that's a new
sun,
one,
right?
right? Data
And
data
you
warehouse.
could just the computation ability, when we're talking about this race for compute power, right? With all the big, players, like with this type of computing, the compute power is outrageous. Didn't Google solve a problem that they would say ordinarily would take, I think they said, and I'm not being hyperbolic here, like 1 trillion years?
Yeah,
I don't even know how you, to solve because of the length and complexity of this. And it's a math problem that goes back to like very early days and like the beginnings of math. And the Google test quantum computer solved this thing in 2 weeks. And I'm like, imagine. I mean, do you think that has a? Yeah. So that's the futurist in me. Like, how do we adapt to this change? And we know it's going to be within our lifetime.
oh yeah. Um, I the way you adapt is that you first you have to, technical literacy needs to be just a common thing. I think it's really important that one thing that we have lost with, all of the advancements thus far, especially with the younger generations, them being able to contextualize, them, the common sense. And so some of those things need to be brought back so that you can run the quantum computer and the quantum computer can work for you.
Yeah.
I do think that we get to a point and, you kind of just, I mean, or the computers will control us. But but I do think that we get to a point where your ideas can be executed and essentially it can run your life. These agents can run your life and you're just telling the agents what to do and you get to do whatever it is you want to do. I think well the counterpoint of that, like, do we go into a society that just really it's are gluttonous and don't do anything other than like, um I don't know, feed themselves. Like it's just, because we're
Well,
not going to
well,
be
welcome to the United States. I mean, come on.
well. Well, can you
Are we
can you imagine that getting worse? Like where we're just like a yeah. So I don't know. I
a
don't know.
slothful human race? But so do you think this? So do you think a lot of these advances change because we've talked about, and I think this ties back to a theme of like people need to be, from our college grads, our kids that are. I got a guy at Syracuse and one that's about to go to college. Being, the minute they enter the workforce, being much more technically astute and educated, because that's going to be a critical sort of knowledge base that you have to be able to harness the power of some of these capabilities, right?
Yeah, for
Does
sure.
that change? How does that change the role of like the CMO and for brands that you guys support? How do you think about that? Right?
Just they have the fractional CMOs now. I think the CMO role changes to that of a it's still about reach, but it's no longer again, it's not about campaigns. Maybe they become more of a behavioral scientist, right? You got to really get in those mindsets in order to reach a consumer in this modern agentic distraction of an age. They have to find where those new places are, and that takes them being much more of a technologist and much more scientific around, neuroscience, and yeah, at least having the constructs and the understanding of those very uh, technical or scientific things, they're gonna have to know enough to be dangerous and dictate the machine or direct the machine.
Yeah, I think the CMOs end up being more connectors and orchestrators, right? I mean, I think that you're not going to need to be in platform to do a lot of things. I think not the CMOs were, but I think that also like AI is going to be doing a lot of things we do today. And then I think being able to connect across the enterprise is going to be more and more important. I mean, CMOs, I think if they stay in that silo and they expect, I'll just work with their agency, they'll do everything, and they're not able to work across the organization, the enterprise organization effectively, it's going to be tough for them.
Yeah.
And I think those roles, like, how during cookie deprecation, and just like the acceleration of platforms, you had the new chief data role, chief growth. And so there was these bifurcation of roles at the C level. I actually think they get consolidated.
Yeah.
So your
those
CMO
roles seem inherently CMO oriented, maybe without the M in there, right?
Mhm.
Customer and data orientation, right? And I think that the superpower I think is your ability to scenario plan, to your point around leveraging science to be able to test and learn at a compounded rapid rate that they just haven't. And that's why you need to be technical. You need to know how to harness the power of this agentic future to be able to test these things at scale and actually have the repeatability in the IP, so it's
Yeah,
constantly learning, which is what you guys are doing for consumer brands. I think CMOs need to do that within their own brands so
that's
that they're
right.
building this constant learning system, and it's refining itself, right? Because that's going to make all of their decisions much more predictable for better outcomes. Um, um, yeah, so they do act, to your point, Rio, as an orchestrator, a conductor of
That's
these
right.
compounding capabilities that they don't, because ordinarily it's a little market research. There's some gut feelings,
and they're going to have to hire really good people who understand. Like, no one can know everything; it's just impossible now, right? So I think they're going to have to I need to have if I don't know MarTech really well, I better hire a really good marketing technologist to my team if you're a CTO. If you don't know analytics well, you better. I mean, I'm not saying they haven't done these previously, but I think it becomes more important to have this really people who are deep in these areas.
That's right. Yep. That's right. And the advice I would tell my grown children now and my granddaughter is go get you some of those hard skills, the plumbing.
I love it.
And
hard skills.
We'll have robots to do that, but that clip is we have more time on that than some of these other space roles. So
yeah, well, Crystal, I think that's a good point. Like people AI is going to do a lot of things, right? But you better be really good at reading, writing, understanding what it's creating for you, so you can make sure that it's actually quality instead of just pasting something that's like if this then that and bullets. And I mean, if people can see right through that, and obviously the output of LLMs is getting better and better, but I think being able to discern what's good, edit things so it's almost like the humanities are making a rebound, right? Those core skills about understanding, thinking, philosophy, being able to philosophize and rationalize things, and being able to read and write well. I almost think those skills are coming back.
They are.
Real, it's good for us.
All of this.
Yes. Yeah. That's like our background.
Your degrees are going to finally pay off.
That comparative literature degree, man, is going really far.
My biggest fear is that, something happens. We're not like a COVID, and we're not able to access, the models anymore. And we go into when we're so overly reliant on technology, and there's there are single points of failure, and we go into the dark age. I always say there's nothing new under the sun. If you look at history and the evolution of intelligence, both from when you had scribes and only the church knew how to write,
Yeah.
And so I always say go back to history, and so we can plan and be ready for this amazing.
Well, think about this. So the epic poems like the Odyssey, the Iliad, Beowulf used to be memorized and spoken handed by down. A person for 8 hours, 10 hours over several days, right? I mean, so no one can do that now. Or think about it now. I can't even remember a phone number. right?
No.
Yeah, Herodotus, wasn't he the historian that brought a lot of that great knowledge from the Far
the oral
East?
mythology, right? He brought it together. But,
and he brought it to the Western world, which had gone dark. The Western world had gone dark. We needed knowledge from the Arab world, the Muslim world, that they had mastered math in algebra, and literally Europe was in the Dark Ages, and we needed a translation layer. And Herodotus sort of brought a lot of history.
Brett, you think about it, like pre-writing, people could memorize a 20-hour song, right?
Yep.
Once you began to write, that skill went away. Like growing up, I still remember the telephone number of my best friend growing up, right? But like I can't remember your number now in a million years. I can't remember people's names now, right? But the thing is, like now that we have phones, like that skill has disappeared. So I mean, like, and I read this study recently about people's brains over the last 2,000 years slowly shrinking because like we've outsourced a lot of these things as part of our culture. So you wonder, as AI does more things for us and it becomes less required to think hard about things, I don't know. I mean, like, I think that does impact us.
It does, and we've seen it. I mean, even just with these digital natives, like these younger generations, and I'll probably get dinged, but
there's no anything goes on Signal and Noise.
Yeah.
But again, like EIQ,
you will not get canceled, Crystal.
I don't want to get don't cancel me. Back in the day, I'm always feeling like my grandparents now. It's just, it's like almost everything that comes out my mouth. I feel like, well, back when I was younger. But at the end of the day, I do think that there are effects that, the cognitive thinking, the emotional intelligence, like some of those things, we have to work at them. And I hope, the educators out there are thinking about curriculums, to maintain those critical functions that make us human.
Yeah, but it's funny you mentioned that. I remember I had someone on my team. I will not reveal anything about this person that could be attached to this person. I remember someone on my team who had an MA and an MBA, an MS and an MBA, and had worked agencies for several years, who couldn't write. I literally could not write a complete sentence. I could not put something that could be showed to a client without being like completely edited. And I remember said to this person, like, this is like crazy. Like, has anyone ever told you can't write? And the reply I got was no. Like, I've always been told I'm a great writer. So I said, well, you can't write. Here's elements of style. You put it in your back pocket and you're going to carry it around for the next 6 months. This person eventually learned to be like a decent writer and actually thank me later. But it is crazy how, I mean, maybe I sound like that grumpy old man about the damn kids today. But I think skills like that, I would argue now that like with AI, they're getting more important. Like we need to focus on them more. Because I think I agree with you that a lot of that has maybe been lost to a certain extent and we need to refine it.
Yeah. And I think those are hard skills. Like people say, hey, the reading, the writing, those are soft skills. Computer programming, that's a hard skill, but AI's proved us wrong there. That hard skill got completely disintermediated. Computer programmers can't find jobs, right? But the reading and writing actually
the good ones can, but I say like, the entry level ones is harder. Yeah.
Those are hard skills that the critical thinking is a hard skill, right? The systems thinking, the writing skills, those are all actually hard skills that are fundamental to surviving and thriving in this era. So I think that's a pretty good conversation. I mean, we've been well over an hour. I think we're an hour and 15. And thank you, Crystal.
Screaming at me, shit.
Yeah, it's getting late on a Friday, and we're all running on fumes. I'm sure.
Yeah, this is all of us standing between us and a happy hour. So
yeah, my brain is
Super Bowl weekend. Who do you guys got?
I know.
Patriots, baby. I'm a New England Patriots fan, and Rio is a Jets fan. So
anyone but the Patriots.
Yeah.
The Patriots losing is their Super Bowl.
Yeah, the Sam Darnold experiment, right?
Yeah.
So
go Sam Darnold. I mean, we wasted I can't. That's another podcast, Brevin, about like the Jets.
Well, and I got a text from my teenage boy saying, and it was the whole controversy about why Drake May did not get the MVP because an Irishman from like Dublin, voted for Justin Herbert as the MVP and it was like, what? So that was the one vote that actually changed. It would have been a tie between Stafford and May. So anyways, I'm a big Patriots fan. looking forward. I actually think it's going to be a closer Super Bowl.
Well, Brett, at least you
than
are
people
from New
think.
England, right? Because in my opinion, the worst type of human is someone who is a Patriots fan, but not from New England.
Well, it's like
That's
growing up.
the lowest form of life.
I was going to say, you see, I hadn't said who I'm going for.
Who are you going? Are you going for New England? Are you a Falcons fan? You're from Atlanta, right?
I'm from Texas, but I live in
you're
Atlanta.
From Texas.
I'm a Texan.
So
So
are you a Texans fan?
I would say I'm a I'm a ride along.
Cowboys. Okay, that's fair.
I'm that depicable human that Rio talks about. Whoever's the best of the best, I'm going for. I have to say probably Cowboys when they're doing well. Obviously Falcons, I'm cool with. I actually, when I was little, I was a little Oilers cheerleader.
There we go.
Nice.
Yeah, so I jumped on. I think football leans itself to bandwagonism. We'll end with that. I jumped on the Steelers bandwagon because I was like, it was the '70s, right? And Terry Bradshaw and Franco Harris, and you're just like that.
The Immaculate Reception, right? Remember
the
that?
Immaculate Reception? They won 4 Super Bowls like in my earliest years, and so I had this association with
Steel Curtain.
Steel Curtain, Mean Joe Green. I had this black and gold. Like I started liking teams that were black and gold. There was this weird color association that I was like, this is like hardwired into my brain. And then I had kids, which are now adults, Crystal. And I'm like, I can't. Like, I've never even been to Pittsburgh, right? I'm like,
you've never been to Pittsburgh?
I've never been to Pittsburgh. So I'm like, I got to raise them Patriots fans. Like that's where the rest of the family is.
Well, I don't know why I picked the Jets. I could have picked the Giants. Like I moved to New York when I was 7, and it's like a bane of my existence. They're terrible. They're so awful. It's like the most poorly run organization. 15-year playoff drought. Like we're a farm team for other teams, like Super Bowl winning quarterbacks. So I don't know. It's bad, but that's another podcast.
Well, this has been awesome, and thank you for the free-flowing conversation. It's kind of like a jazz band over here. We set a little structure, and then we let the players improvise. And so, thank you, Crystal, for improvising with us and offering your insight, intelligence, and it's been great. And for everybody that is listening and has made it all the way through this episode, subscribe. Again, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, wherever you listen or watch your podcast.
Smash that subscribe button, sign up, follow us, whatever it is.
And we'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody.
So long.